Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I am here with Chris Kesnick from Arts Fishing Club. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, what's going on?
Man, living the dream, my friend. As you have eloquently stated many times, correct? Living the
Yeah,
dream is kind of like your mantra a little bit.
it's definitely one of them. Yeah, that seems to pop out a good amount of times. So, and I certainly feel that way often.
So we have that connection already because I that is like my catchphrase. I'm living the dream. So I appreciate that, my fellow dreamer.
Hey, hell yeah.
So let's dive into. I first want to talk about the band's name. Of course, I think that's a good starting point. And so my understanding is that your grandfather Art took you and your cousin when you were kids fishing, and what you kind of learn from that is that it's not about catching the big fish. It's about the process and about enjoying like actual fishing. Speak about that and talk about that.
Yeah. So when I first started playing music, I was playing with one of my cousins, and we had gone on this fishing trip with my grandfather the year previously, and I've got a big family on both sides, and we had made these Arts Fishing Club T-shirts with that grandfather. He kind of suggested that we be Arts Fishing Club. I was like, very serious ultimately about music. And I thought that was the dumbest name ever and that no one would ever take us seriously. But the more that I thought about it, my grandfather on the other side of my family is also named Arthur. Both my grandfathers were named Arthur. And I love that name is kind of a play on words. It's an homage both to them, but then, like you said, just a way to approach our art, music like fishing. And yeah, I think just the more that I thought about that, the more that I really realized how similar music and fishing are. Um, if you are so focused when you're fishing on landing this big fish and like so focused on this result, you're never going to have a good time. It's going to just be brutal because uh you just can't quite control that. But with that being said, too, fishing isn't just luck, and neither with music. And because I would go fishing with my cousins who were significantly better fishermen and had put lots more time in than I had in it, and they would catch more fish, and I'd be in the same boat with them, casting the same baits, yet somehow they're catching fish and I'm not. And so I really loved that as a metaphor for music, because there is both this element of what feels like luck, and sometimes it is like, I've been with little tiny 8-year-olds that are casting on a Snoopy pole that's this big and land this monster fish, well, I've been grinding all day, like using all the right baits, all the right things, and I can't catch anything. um and yeah, it's just like a perfect analogy to me with music, where it's this combination of what feels like luck, but ultimately the more times that you're casting out into the quote unquote sea of creativity, and that, the more times that the more songs that you write, is every song is a new cast, every new thing that you put out is kind of a new cast. And yeah, it's a metaphor that I think helps keep me grounded, because it's an industry that I think a lot of people lose themselves, and I could see myself in some ways, if I wasn't mentally preparing for it, just like focusing on these end result numbers, or these things that are important to a degree, to make a living, but are ultimately just not what it's all about. And Yeah, so that's kind of where it all came from. That night, after my cousin suggested the name, I was laying in bed and thinking, like, kind of all those thoughts and connections came together. And then just the fact that it is an homage to both my grandfathers, who I just owe so much, I mean, literally my existence to. It just felt right.
And a band's kind of like a club, so like it totally goes with it. I completely agree with you, my friend.
Yeah, it really is, and especially our band. We're a Nashville band, so Nashville kind of has, it's common with, it's semi-common and becoming more common in other places as well, but specifically in Nashville, everyone moved here to pursue their own dream, and so it's highly ambitious musical people that have pretty strong visions, and everyone is full-time music, so people are paying their bills. So if Arts Fishing Club doesn't have a tour or a show in the next month, these guys are playing with other bands because that's how they're making rent every month. And so there is almost like 10 to 15 people in Arts Fishing Club that I very much consider like a member of Arts Fishing Club.
Yeah, no, that's it's funny because we got to see, and I've gotten to know the guys in the Minx,
Mm.
and the bassist in the Minx is also the bassist for Marcus King. So
Yep. Yep.
to your point. Um, so growing up in Wisconsin, I have been there myself. Green Bay, Milwaukee, Door County. You were there until you were 18. That obviously leaves an impression on anyone. Talk about how Wisconsin has kind of formed you as a musician.
Yeah, Wisconsin is a very joyful state. People from Wisconsin love the fact that they're from there, like just absurdly, like this weird state pride of we just love where we live, and are incredibly friendly, like pretty much, and are professional alcoholics, but like in like this weird positive way. It's like not, I mean, I'm sure there's a dark side to it, but it doesn't feel very dark. It's more like you meet someone and you'll be like walking on the street, and someone will be like, oh, they'll bump into you and they'll be like, oh man, let me buy you a beer, or like, oh, come hang here, take 2 beers. It's like our love language is just giving people beer. Um and it breeds just a very fun and kind of joyful crew of people. And I think that that absolutely is in our music. I Someone asked, what's the one word to describe your music, and I said joyful. Even in the sad songs, I hope that there's ultimately like a lot of joy that is coming out of the
The
pain
vibe.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the overarching thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about the music. The new album, you released it on the day that you play Bonnaroo.
Yes, yeah, repping the
Um,
hat.
uh, exactly. So was that planned, or did it just come about that way?
It more came about that way. We were, I mean, like the final, I guess it was planned to some degree, but not really. Like
Right.
it we were going to be releasing the album, within that couple week span, and then all of a sudden we found out we were playing Bonnaroo that day. Um and it just, yeah, it worked out perfectly. So it wasn't like, oh, we were sitting there waiting, to picking a release day for the album, and like, oh, let's wait a couple months until the Bonnaroo show. No, it wasn't that at all. We had that date, or that like couple weeks picked out, and then we found out that we were playing Bonnaroo on a Friday, which is like release day always, New Music Friday. And yeah, it really worked out serendipitously.
So do you want to talk about the new album first? Or do you want to talk about Bonnaroo first? Because we
Hey,
could segue into either one.
whichever one, you're driving this, boat.
Let's talk about the new album then, because then we can
Cool.
talk about Bonnaroo, because obviously you have live dates that you want to talk about, and and I want to talk about that as well. So
Sure.
So yeah, so the new album, Rothko Sky, and as you
Mhm.
can see, my background, you could call it cheesy. I
I love
really
it.
put some thought into it because I'm thinking, all right, well, first of all, I was going to look for a fishing picture that had like a grandfather and his kids because
Mhm.
that seemed to be appropriate. But then I found this picture. And I'm like, you know what? If I am listening to this album and it's called Rothko Sky, this is the sky that I want to listen to because this is the only sky that's going to match the album. Like, it's
Yeah.
so good, man.
Wow, wow. Well, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, it really I very much have already noticed the background. I was going to say something. And yeah, you really nailed it because that is the vibe right there.
Yeah, it's joyful and it's beautiful, and, there are moments I feel like on this album where you sound like Bon Iver. I feel like there's moments where you sound like the Black Keys. I feel like there's moments where you sound like the Lumineers, and then there's moments where you sound like Dave Matthews. More vocally, though, and I feel like it's on Arizona. Like, have you ever been compared to Dave Matthews, like, your voice, like, or your vocals? 'Cause it's
Um,
eerily similar in Arizona, like, more
really?
like Some Devil like Dave Matthews, like his solo stuff, not like full
Sure.
band stuff, but that
Sure.
haunting kind of voice, and man, it's so well done.
Well, wow, thank you. I mean, I take that as a massive compliment. I love every single one of those artists that you just listed off. So that is a very, very cool thing to hear that like those elements and influences kind of came out. Yeah, there have been not like a ton, but there have definitely been times considered or a little bit compared. So yeah,
Okay.
a little bit. Um yeah, but Bon Iver, Wisconsin boy, so I'm obsessed with Bon Iver. Have always loved his music, and I grew up going to Dave Matthews Band shows at Alpine Valley. Which in Wisconsin is this. It's actually where Stevie Ray Vaughan's helicopter crashed and he died. But it's this massive, massive uh, venue in Wisconsin that not many people seem to know about. It doesn't get the notoriety of like Red Rocks, the Gorge.
Right.
It doesn't get the same notoriety, probably because it's in Wisconsin. But I've been to all of those venues, and man, Alpine Valley is by far and away my favorite venue I've ever been to. It is a massive and extremely well put together amphitheater.
So Pearl Jam did their 20th anniversary, shows there.
That
So
checks out.
yeah, so that's really though I think the first time that I was familiar with it, and that's going back, 10, 15 years. So to your
Yep.
point though, you're right. It is kind of an unknown, but I've always heard that from anyone that's in the business or that's been there, so that it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of people's favorite venue to play, I've heard, because again, it's in Wisconsin, and so the party surrounding it is just 50,000 people saying, "Here, take my beer. Here, take another beer. Here." So it's a pretty rowdy bunch. And that makes for a very fun time.
So I want to talk about some individual songs on this album. And actually this kind of is a good segue as well. So Doug's song. There is a lyric or lyrics in this song that I think are pertinent to what you've talked about in the past and something that I wanted to bring up again. You say in Doug's song, I can't help but feel like a phony when I'm around my friends. They're all masters in their own right while I just keep pretending. Is that like talking about imposter syndrome and like kind of that insecurity like feeling, or is it a little bit more than that, or talk about that?
Yeah, I definitely think it's imposter syndrome to some degree. It's funny because I wouldn't say I'm insecure for the most part about music at all. I actually feel very confident and very secure. But there is there is just this element, especially I think living in Nashville, where every single one of our friends is just like, I'm constantly just like, holy shit, like holy shit, man. Like, or, holy shit, girl. Like, this is just, wow. Like, you're amazing. And, um, I think it's just more a nod to that than it is like this particular, like, that I'm like,
You're okay with being great. You don't have to be amazing, right? Like you're dealing with people all the time that are just session musicians, especially in Nashville. Like I can attest to that, man. Like the talent level is just out off the charts. So, if you're a singer-songwriter, it's just an honor that these people want to play with you. Right?
yeah, yeah. And it's the players, but it's also just like other artists and friends. And
Sure.
and there's something to be said, like, I think honestly what that might be getting at a little bit, like, in out of my subconscious too, is just like, it doesn't, there's a whole other element besides, I mean, that's debatably more important, besides talent in the industry of having a career. And it's kind of building the quote unquote business aspect side of it too, or just like the figuring out the strategy for getting the music out there, and getting shows booked, and some of those other things. And so I think at some point, there's times where I come across people frequently that are just so talented, that feel way more talented maybe than me in the moment, maybe while I'm sitting there just seeing them. And Arts Fishing Club isn't the biggest band in the world, but we're building, and we've been having more and more success, with it all. It's just kind of been building on itself a bit. And so I think maybe some of that is also just kind of nodding to the fact of, uh kind of, why do we get to play shows and figure it, are carrying some of this momentum, maybe, when others are just as talented, um but maybe it isn't quite, being recognized in the same way, or something like that. I don't know if
It's
that
like
makes sense.
wrestling with success, right? You're on one side of it, you're like, well, no, I shouldn't, this is like I shouldn't be doing, I shouldn't be this popular. But then on the other side, you're like, man, all this hard work, yeah, like I deserve this.
Yeah, yeah, and I would never describe us as popular. I don't know. So maybe, yeah, maybe that's me continuing with the imposter syndrome or something like that, of just like not really thinking of us in that sort of way. I mean, I do, in the sense of we're gonna always keep going and keep, I think we'll be building this band to be as, I'll definitely keep building. I love it. That's one of my favorite things in the world, is just the building and the growth and writing music, and pushing things further and further. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to like really think about or consider. I don't know. I think we just view ourselves as very normal people.
Yeah, and when you keep it or make it as simple as that, I think it leads to a lot more success.
Yeah, maybe we shall see.
so so yeah, so the other part, or the other part of the album that I want to talk about is the leadoff song, Foster Falls. It, it just has this bounce to it, and again, and I think that comes up with the joyful part of it. But I really, when I listened to this song, and it was probably about the fifth or sixth time that I listened to this song. Do you remember the show The Wonder Years?
I don't.
So
No.
it was on in the 80s, and Fred Savage,
Okay.
the actor Fred Savage, he
Yep.
was, as a boy actor, he was in that show.
Okay.
And so his love interest was this girl named Winnie. And so Joe Cocker's With a Little Help from My Friends
Mhm.
was the theme song for this show. It was on ABC. It ran for like 8 to 10 years, like I said, like late 80s, early 90s.
Cool.
Dude, this song could totally be the theme song for that show. And since you've never seen it, like you kind of get lost in translation. But Uh,
Nice. No, I'll have to look it up and watch an episode with that kind of in mind. I love that.
yeah, man, it's totally like it again. It just it brings back this air of like innocence and like where you don't have a care in the world, where responsibility isn't always knocking on your door. Like that's where that song like makes me feel. Is that kind of like where you're at with it as well, or am I completely off?
Yeah, no, I mean that song is, pretty autobiographical about a camping trip. And it was a
Yep.
camping trip that I think my ex-girlfriend and I, it was our first ever like kind of away camping trip or away trip together. So it was very early in dating. And we were, kind of unbeknownst to me, I think at the time we were kind of both falling in love with each other. And there's something about camping. I Camping might be my favorite thing in the world to do, because it just gets you closer to the earth and real what I would call real life. How 99.99% of humans, lived in
Right.
perpetual power outages. So it's only been the past 150 years where we have electricity, and I have to imagine, I know that whenever I go camping, uh, that reset of being in nature like that for an extended period of time just lifts all this crazy weight, um, from me. And I think it's probably because, naturally, genetically speaking, that's how we were designed to live for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that song just carries a combination of this idea of, falling off the Foster Falls is a real waterfall in Tennessee, and that's where we were camping. So it's like this metaphor of rushing over the edge, falling in love, but then just that feeling of being absolutely free camping. Yeah, it definitely comes through the song.
Yeah. So let's talk about camping. Bonnaroo last weekend.
Yes.
So, I'm not going to ask you about how the feeling was like being on that stage because, obviously it's not fair to you to try and put that in words. But the question I do want to ask you is and you mentioned it already. You've been to festivals as a customer, as a, fan.
Mhm.
How is it different and what is your perspective like when you're now playing these festivals and then walking around as as a fan? Like, is that a different perspective? Do you feel like talk about that?
Yeah, it's definitely different. With Bonnaroo, I actually went once in 2011, saw Bon Iver there, and they blew my mind there.
Mhm.
I could talk about that set for a while, but and I kind of vowed to never go back to Bonnaroo until we were playing it. Like deep down, I was, because every year it comes up and it's only an hour away, and there's a pain as a musician, I think, going to festivals and not being involved in it. Like if that's what you're about, like I know a lot of other friends and musicians that I think have kind of, I know a lot of other people in town that like don't go to Bonnaroo because it's just like there's, when you want to be playing and a part of it, there's just something that feels like, hey, no, I'm not going to go there until I'm a part of it, because I'm working towards that. um so that feeling of being there, getting to enjoy the festival, was really, really awesome as well, because it felt like, to some degree, like I that we had earned the right to enjoy it,
Yeah.
because we were a part of it.
Yep.
So that was really cool. Logistically speaking, just the fact that there's a whole kind of behind the behind the stage network of entrances and exits that we have access to, and an artist lounge and artist catering that, is away from the masses and the lines. That's also just really awesome, and going to be, I think, I forever hope to go to, if I'm going to a festival, hope to have the artist pass, because that is certainly it's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Being able to have that kind of access. So yeah, it was really, really incredible. And then I think to that point, just mingling in the artist lounge, everyone is on equal playing field there. So, locking eyes with Sheryl Crow a couple times, mind blowing. Like, oh yeah, I'm in the same artist lounge as Sheryl Crow, and
Yeah.
being backstage by like Korn and stuff like that was, yeah, pretty wild. From for like the little kid in me that grew up idolizing these people.
Yeah. Korn's that album with like, the F word and the man, that album is just so good. So
Yeah, I
good.
mean, they're just absolute legends. Like,
Yeah. Sheryl Crow, if it makes you happy. Mm.
oh yeah.
And she's a Nashvilleite too, is right? Correct?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
She lives in Nashville.
Yeah.
Very involved in the community. It's really cool. She's her name pops up all the time. And she actually, I think she supports the radio station Lightning 100, like very, very. I think she's a very big supporter of them,
Gotcha.
which is great.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about the rest of the year. What is in store? Tour dates, any what else? Yeah, what do you got? Tell your fans, tell our
Yeah.
audience. What do you
Yeah.
got?
So we're touring kind of on and off the rest of the summer. We're not we just finished a big national tour. That was like 30 days out on the road straight. We in 3 weeks we're doing an East Coast run. So we're heading up to, I think, Philly, DC, New York City, and Boston. Um, and then we are hitting some Midwest cities, hitting some festivals. My hometown is Appleton, Wisconsin, and there's this big festival, Mile of Music, that we're playing 3 nights at. And then we're hitting Minneapolis, Chicago, Davenport, Iowa. Um, and then I'm trying to think if there's potentially an opening gig that might be happening, slash we might be announcing a bunch more dates, but that's still getting worked out. And yeah, we've released the record. We have another album that is getting finished pretty quickly here,
Okay, okay, cool.
that we're very excited about as well. And so that uh I'm hoping is going to be done by fall, and realistically probably won't be out till spring. But yeah, we're just churning away. It feels really good to be in a place of just putting out, letting go and putting out, and yeah, so feeling very, very, very grateful right now.
Yeah. So I am humbly asking for 2 tickets to the Philadelphia show because that's only about an hour and a half for
Nice.
us. So
Hey, you got him. You
my
got him.
girlfriend and I would love to come down and see you guys
Yeah,
July 13th, I think, correct?
I think that is right. Yeah, that sounds.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
So that's
you guys are on the list.
appreciate that, my friend.
Just remind me of that, because
I
yeah, that
will.
every now and again, that yeah, I'll tell someone, oh yeah, you're on the list, and then yeah,
That sound bitch.
yeah, don't remember. Yeah, that definitely happened one time in this past tour. I feel bad about that.
so so Appleton, Wisconsin. I have heard of this Mile Road Festival, and we are going to try and not probably this year, but
Mhm.
we will make it out there for with the podcast
You
because our
you
friends,
absolutely should.
yeah, our friends South for Winter are a band actually from Nashville as well by way of New Zealand.
Mhm.
They told us about that festival and they said it is like there's no other festival that treats the artist better than that festival. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. It was started by a guy, Corey Chisel, who is an artist. He's written. He's born and raised in Appleton as well. But he's written. I think he's got a Grammy with Emmylou Harris. And he's got a couple different just projects that are really, really great. And he kind of started it with another guy, Dave Willems, in Appleton. And yeah, their focus from day one was like, Hey, artists on the road are constantly kind of treated, taken advantage of, and treated pretty poorly by a lot of places.
Yeah.
And we want to do the exact opposite thing. So they do some amazing things like they provide. There's a Romanesco dental in town, like donates. So they're
Massages, right? Like
yeah,
nail
yeah,
care, yeah, everything.
yeah, massages,
Eye care, yeah.
chiropractic, eye care. I mean, the dental work is the biggest thing, you know.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, and then just the people of Wisconsin are so supportive
Hmm.
of art and so grateful
Yep.
and buy merch like crazy and are there for the music and are supporting like for real.
Yeah.
um and it's certainly been funny and such a cool thing touring the US now and seeing, wow, like different places and different cities have different vibes and different energies. And so it's been very eye-opening and really cool um for my hometown to be blossoming in this music sort of way that is just a really beautiful and supportive thing towards the artists. It's yeah, tons of my Nashville friends now have played Mile of Music, and they uh everyone just is always raving about Appleton, and I'm like, I know it's the best. Of
Well, Chris Kesnick, thank you so much for doing this today.
course.
Yeah, this has been great, as well as the new album. Much luck to you guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a couple weeks,
Yes.
and yeah, look forward to anything else that you guys are putting out for the rest of the year.
I
So,
I I appreciate it. We'll be releasing a lot more. A lot more is coming, and yeah, thank you so much. We're fully independent. So like, you know, you and others like spreading the word about us helps more than you even know, you know. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate it and appreciate you taking the time to like ask really good questions and do a bit of research. That always makes it more fun. So thank you.
well, I appreciate that, my friend. Um, Guys, this has been the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dog. This has been Chris. Check out our sponsor, Raw Outfitters. Go to rawoutfitters.com. Please like, subscribe, do all that stuff with social media. That only helps us and it helps bands like Arts Fishing Club. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.